Need tools? We've got you covered. Go to ChromebookParts.com or click on the link below to pick up this sleek, portable toolkit. Flip the device over and remove 9 6mm screws from the bottom cover. Gently insert the opener pick between the bottom cover and the palmrest and slide along the edges to pop the bottom cover free. Push the locking clip back and unplug the battery from the motherboard. Peel back the plastic covering the antenna cables and gently lift up to unplug the cables from the Wi-Fi card. Remove one 3mm screw from the Wi-Fi card. Gently pull back to unplug the Wi-Fi card from the motherboard. Flip open the locking clip and unplug the palmrest cable from the motherboard. Flip open the locking clip and unplug the touchpad cable from the motherboard. Peel back the tape, flip open the locking clip, and unplug the LCD cable from the motherboard. Gently lift up to unplug the speakers from the motherboard. Gently pull back to unplug the daughterboard cable from the motherboard. Flip open the locking clip and unplug the other daughterboard cable from the motherboard. Gently pull back to unplug the fan from the motherboard. Remove the following screws from the heatsink, fan, and motherboard. Remove the heatsink. And remove one more 3mm motherboard screw. Remove 3 4mm screws from the hinge. Raise the hinge. Remove the fan tape. And gently lift up and pull back on the motherboard, sliding it out from underneath the fan and taking care not to bend or damage the ports. Unwind the antenna cable and the daughterboard cable from the fan grooves. And remove one more 3mm screw from the fan. Remove the fan. And remove 3 4mm screws from the hinge and 2 2mm screws from the daughterboard. Raise the hinge. Peel the daughterboard cable free from the palmrest, and gently lift up and pull back on the daughterboard, taking care not to bend or damage the ports. Lift the speakers off their posts, and unwind the speaker cable from its grooves. Peel back the tape covering the touchpad screws. And remove the 3 2mm screws from the touchpad. Lift the palmrest partway up and slide the touchpad free to remove. Unwind the LCD cable from its grooves. Lift the palmrest partway up and gently wiggle it free from the LCD assembly. Replace the palmrest back onto the hinges. And raise the hinges up after you've got it in place. Slide the touchpad back into place. And replace the 3 2mm screws. Replace the tape. Replace the speakers back onto their posts, and wind the cable back into its grooves. Replace the daughterboard back into its port slots, and lower the hinge. Replace the 3 4mm screws back into the hinge and the 2 2mm screws back into the daughterboard. Replace the fan. And replace the 1 3mm screw. Wind the antenna cables and the daughterboard cable back into their grooves on the fan. Using a 99% isopropyl alcohol solution, clean off any old thermal paste from the motherboard and heatsink. Replace the motherboard back into its port slots, and be sure to get all the cables out from underneath. Once you're done, lower the hinge. Replace the 3 4mm screws back into the hinge. Replace the 1 3mm screw back into the motherboard. Apply a small amount of thermal paste to the motherboard as shown, and replace the heatsink. Replace the 4 3mm screws back into the heatsink. Replace 2 3mm screws back into the fan. And replace 3 2mm screws back into the motherboard. Plug the Wi-Fi card back into the motherboard, and replace the 1 3mm screw. Gently push down to plug the antenna cables back into the Wi-Fi card, and replace the plastic strip. Plug the Palmrest cable back into the motherboard. Plug the touchpad cable back into the motherboard. Plug the speakers back into the motherboard. Plug the LCD cable back into the motherboard. Plug the fan back into the motherboard. And finally, plug the 2 Daughterboard cables back into the motherboard. Plug the battery back into the motherboard and slide the locking clip closed. Replace the bottom cover and push down to snap it back into place. Replace the 9 6mm screws back into the bottom cover.